Hey everyone, it's Alan Schimmel and welcome back here to Techstrong TV. My next guest, it's actually his first time, I think. Well, his first time on Techstrong TV with me, though he's been at Datadog 6 years. So I'm glad he finally made it over here. Emilio Escobar is the CISO, CISO at Datadog. Emilio, welcome.
Yeah,
How are
thanks.
you?
Doing well. Thanks for having me. Pleasure to be here.
My pleasure. So, Emilio, I mentioned that you're a CISO at Datadog now for, I don't know, 6 years or so, maybe more. Um, Give us a sense of like kind of your journey to becoming CISO there.
Yeah, I think I'm definitely not one of them who had a career plan to end up where I am right now. It just happened organically. So background is a software engineer, computer science degree. I did a long stint with the federal government, doing some software engineering there, but all of it was specifically purposed in security itself, different aspects of it. Did security consulting for a bit, and ended up meeting the PlayStation team while I was doing that. Went to PlayStation, ran the software security teams there for a while. Then went to Hulu to lead the whole program for a couple of years. Took that through the whole Disney transition, and Datadog called. I by then already knew of Datadog. Hulu was a new Datadog customer while I was there, so I already had some connections to Datadog. And when Alexi called, had the conversation with him, it all felt like it was a great fit. And yeah, 6 years later, here I am.
Excellent. Excellent. Um, what a great story, man. Right? Just so you went from Hulu, that was a new customer of Datadog, right, over to Datadog at the time.
Right. Yeah. And I remember seeing the demo of Datadog's first security version of a security product, or a demo of the first version of security product while I was at Hulu. This was reInvent, golly, like maybe 2019, I think.
Mhm.
And seeing wow, this makes sense. But back then, obviously, it was very early. And yeah, it's that's when we first got it in security. And needless to say, back then I didn't realize I was going to end up playing a major role in it. So
Absolutely. That was probably like right before COVID too.
yes, so I joined the company during COVID. So I didn't get to go to the office to meet people in person until a year after I had joined,
Yeah. Well, it was a crazy time. It was a
yeah,
crazy time.
it was interesting
Looking
meeting
back on
people,
it,
seeing
yeah,
people live, and like, oh, that's what you actually look like.
absolutely. We went through that. Because it was COVID. We were still operating, but and I was hired, like interviewing people and then hiring people that you never actually met.
Right.
You know what I mean? It was a
Yeah.
little weird. Interesting times, but we're in interesting times now, right?
Yes, we are.
And I'm sure as much as security was new for Datadog then, fast forward now 6, 7 years later. Well, security's not new, but everything we're doing seems to be new because of AI, LLMs, agents, agentic AI, and all of these things. It's really rewriting the book almost daily, right? Talk to us about, Datadog's had to evolve, Datadog's had to adapt and change and grow. From where you sit as the CISO, how do you see that growth? How does it play out?
Yeah, and it hasn't just been in security. We've seen that expansion even in our observability business as well. So what's been interesting throughout the years is to see Datadog from going from just an observability platform to be really a mission critical platform now, because now we no longer just tell you, hey, something's going on in your environment. We allow you to actually act on it, and security on top of that. So the mission criticality for us is definitely exponentially grown, and what we mean to our customers it means something completely different. But where there's an opportunity, there's also threat actors that want to exploit that. So we definitely have been helping customers understand, again, not just using AI to understand better what's happening in their environment, how to address it to the point of having agents that can do the things for them. but also helping them protect their AI applications as well as they're working on their journey to release AI applications. So we have an SRE agent that helps you find root cause analysis. We have a security agent that helps you triage all the thousands of signals the security teams have to evaluate. And then we even have a coding agent that helps you fix code. And if you really put it together, there's a whole feedback loop that we cover, right? We can have an error in production, or we can have an issue with security that was introduced by a change. And now we have an agent that would actually make the code a configuration change or propose it to address that, right? So really close end to end. So this is being well received, but that means our responsibility to our customers has also grown with it.
Excellent. You know, I was reading something the other day that 2026, so 2025, we started experimenting with agents.
Mm-hmm.
But in 2026, people don't want to be experimenting anymore. They want it to just work. Right. And let's be honest, in 2025, a lot of the agents, they had that cool factor, but they really didn't work so good. Right. A lot of it was, yeah, I could see the potential, but this isn't quite ready yet. When it comes to the Datadog agents, are they ready? Are customers using them to deliver value today?
Yeah, we see that. We see that they're working and they're delivering value, but also we continue to invest in them, right? So Olivia said this, our CEO, founder said this in an interview a couple of days ago. It's interesting. Forever, we've been okay with humans being correct 75% of the time. What's interesting about AI agents is if an AI agent is correct only 70% of the time, notice my statement, only correct 70% of this time, we don't accept that as a good product anymore. So it's really fascinating. So while they're working and customers are seeing value, we still get a lot of feedback and we still continue to work on them because we know there's so much more we can do. But then we work in them in the sense of if there's a situation where the product didn't get to cover, now we work on it. Certain scenarios that customers are going through that maybe the agent probably wasn't part of that 70% that he got right. We build these feedback loops that customers can tell us, hey, this wasn't exactly what we wanted to be, or this wasn't accurate. And then we invest in correcting that via the feedback loops that we mentioned. But yes, customers are seeing root cause analysis. We use it ourselves as a lot. So we're a strict dogfooding company. So all these agents are actively helping us maintain, run, and protect Datadog as a platform. Plus, we also hear from our customers that it's working for them.
Excellent. I did a story last week, or it was actually a video, that in today's world, even though everybody's using AI, everybody's trying it, everybody's using it, everybody's experimenting, it has sort of a scarlet letter, right? Where people say, oh, well, AI, it's only 70%. Yeah, well, humans were only 60%, so we got a 10% improvement, but that's
Right.
they don't look at it that way. It's
Yep.
only 70%. If I'm going to trust AI, it's got to be 99, 5/9.
Right.
And, I think this too will pass. I think it's sort of an artificial bar we're creating. I think part of it is because people are out of fear, right? Because is it going to make them lose their jobs, change their jobs, what have you?
Yeah.
But, it gets better. It's getting better every day. Now, you as a CISO and talking on behalf of other CISOs, though, is this making your job easier, harder, a little, some of both? What do
I
you
would say
think?
it's both. On one hand, it's making it harder because the attack surface just keeps changing and growing, right? So not just what people can do with AI, say shadow applications or shadow IT as we called it, or the mold books or OpenClaws of the world. But which inherently they're nice projects to work on. They're interesting, but they do carry some risk. But I think it creates that surface, but also attackers using AI, right? So a lot of the things that we see are using AI to hijack things like open source dependencies, things like developer, the extensions that they use, the developers use in their development client, the IDEs. But then if you use it for defending yourself, then in a way you're say, like what I say is if the tide rises for everyone, and everyone gets lifted. So I say it's both. It creates opportunities, it creates challenges. But ironically, if you're not using AI to fight those challenges, then you're going to be behind already, if not. So I always encourage CISOs and security teams to think about what they can build with AI. So us using agents internally for security purposes, also using LLMs to understand malicious patterns or malicious behaviors are critical for us. So a couple of things that we've done is we actually use LLMs to detect not vulnerable code, because I think there's a lot of that out there already, and the models are getting better at writing proper code. But we're using LLMs to detect malicious intended code. So imagine a popular open source dependency package getting hijacked, where the code that it got introduced by the attacker is perfect. It adds no vulnerability. No scanner will find a vulnerability with it, but what it does is bad, right? And what it means to do is, let me extract all the secrets that I can find from the developer's laptop and send it to a server that I own. Those things are happening now, and you have to use AI to be able to stay on top of that. The react to shell vulnerability, for example, is a perfect use case of using AI to find it and look at the repercussion that it had, right? Where a lot of servers were exposed. We not only see that was the initial entry point, but then attackers get clever and use stealth techniques, like our research showed, to then say, okay, well, if I can penetrate a web server and then have it proxy every request to a server I own, then I can exfiltrate all kinds of data and credentials to me. So I think the attack patterns are changing because of AI. No, I mean, we still see the phishing, the identity-based attacks, and all of those, because attackers are always going to go for the path of least resistance. But AI now has opened a bunch of paths for them. And I think we have to open paths for security teams to be able to use AI to defend themselves. So it's both.
It is both. I tell you another thing. I said it on Techstrong Gang the other day. Even at this early stage of AI use, and I think it's still early, we're already on this, and I've been in security 25 years myself, right? We're already at the stage in security where we're going to need AI to fight AI, right? These scalability, I mentioned before the 600 vulnerabilities that Opus found, the amount of just the sheer, the better phishing, right? The phishing and smishing is so much better because they're using AI to write these things, right? You need it. You need to deploy AI to fight the AI because the bad guys are using it for sure.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Yep.
And at the end of the day, data is data, right? So these models are really good at finding patterns or missed patterns in the data. So while attackers are using AI to create data, whether it could be a video of me saying like, "Hey, I need 1,000 gift cards," you can also use AI to figure out like, "Hey, that's not actually me in the video." So it's really fascinating.
Oh, that's a whole nother point.
Yes.
The other thing is, look, I think we had evolved to the point where observability and security were two sides of the same coin, right? I think with AI, they're both on the same side of the coin. That's how tight AI makes them very tightly intertwined. And we're going to continue to see that, right? Because besides the effect AI is having on security, it's having an equal impact in the observability side of the house.
Correct. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's absolutely what we're seeing. And to your point, observability and security being both sides, two sides of the same coin. I think AI is both the heads and the tails of that coin, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it becomes the coin but that's what's going on here, right? AI is becoming the focal point of all of these things, and it's a little, it could be a little scary because, like you said, it's only 70%, not 100%, but it's better than what we had and it's faster than what we had.
Yeah.
But, we're still going through this phase where we're getting comfortable with that.
Hmm. Yeah, I think it's very similar to the cloud adoption phase, right? Like, I remember when the cloud was
Sure.
booming, a lot of the fear was where I lose control, where is the data going to go, costs, what have you.
Yep.
And there were always nuances that maybe, okay, the first time you made a shift was a lift and shift, you didn't get it 100% right. But those that actually saw like, hey, there's actually something here in the future that we can continue to work on, are now some of the leading either cloud companies or companies that run out of the cloud. So it's similar of that. It's like when the paradigm shifts, fear is part of it, and uncertainty is part of it. That's why I don't subscribe to a lot of the FUD that you see around there, and especially with AI, because yes, attackers are using AI, but defenders so should. So I'm glad that we're actually talking about defenders using AI more so than attackers using AI, because the latter doesn't really give you a way out. It's just
You know,
more of like, be careful. Instead of, we should talk more about what people are using AI for to protect themselves.
agreed. Emilio, where can people get more information about the Datadog security? Well, Datadog security offering, but also kind of, what's going on with Datadog security and AI and all of these. Like, how can they stay up to date in the know?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a couple. So I will say the blog. It's a good resource. We have engineering blog. We have the security blog. We have security blog that's called Security Labs. That's actually where my group, when we track threat actors, when we track certain attack patterns, malware, what have you, like we post our research there. Our engineering blog is really good. Datadog is very open in the sense of, we not only give you product updates, but we actually talk about things that we learn ourselves and how to run a platform of our scale, mistakes that we've made, new things that we've done. So, for example, we talk about outages that we've had in the past. We talk about how we profile a certain service to gain performance improvements, how we scale systems, how we manage the data volume that we manage. And then on the security side, we talk about how we do things that's at our scales as well. So our blog post is great. If you haven't heard of Datadog and security in the same sentence, I don't blame you. We're pretty new in the space, but I will tell you that about 50% of our Fortune 100 customers use us on the security side, and about 68 or so, sorry, the Fortune 500, 68% of Fortune 100 use us on the security side. And we continue to invest heavily in security because Datadog started to remove the silo between dev and ops, and we think we can remove the silo of security and dev as well with our platform.
Amen. Amen. That's why I got into DevOps, all those years ago. I thought
Yeah,
that's what needed to be done, coming from security. Emilio, thanks for coming here on Techstrong TV, man. We appreciate it. Come
thank
back,
you.
keep us posted. Are you guys going to be at RSA conference at all?
We will, yes. We actually have quite a few things planned for RSA, so we'll definitely have a presence. So hope
You
to
know
see you
what?
there.
We'll be there all week on Broadcast Alley. And of course, we have an interesting thing going on Monday there. Every year we put on our DevSecOps event. I think Datadog's been involved in it in years past. Um, this year it's a little different. We didn't call it DevSecOps. It's securing AI native dev because everything's AI, right?
That's
So
actually a
it's
good name for it. Yeah.
securing AI native dev. I'm actually doing a panel. If you're going to be there, we'll have your people talk to my people.
There
I'd
you
love
go.
to have you do it with me that Monday.
I would love to. Yeah, sounds great.
All right. Emilio Escobar, CISO at Datadog here on
Thank you.
Techstrong TV. We're going to take a break. We'll be back. Thank you, Emilio.
Thanks for having me.
Hey guys, thanks for the throw. We're here with Bill Mulligan, who's a maintainer for Cilium, which is a project that is run by the Cloud Native Computing Foundation, but is also based on eBPF. And the eBPF has a new report out talking about, well, the level of adoption and what's driving it these days. Bill, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Where are we on this journey with eBPF? I feel like, the technology came out, it's been a little while, and it's starting to show up in the latest versions of Linux, but it's not clear to me that everybody's deployed the latest versions of Linux just yet. So, where are we on the journey?
Yeah, I think we're really at an exciting point for eBPF. Kind of, as you said, the technology's been out for about 11 years now, but that's kind of when it first got merged into Linux kernel. As you know, most people probably aren't running the latest kernel. They're running ones that are 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 years back. And so as the technology has progressed, we're finally getting to the point where most major Linux distributions and LTS releases now support a modern enough version of eBPF that we can kind of start to do fun and exciting things with that, right? Before, it just really small programs limited to 4K. Now we can do a million instruction programs. So I would say the fun part about eBPF is now possible in production for the vast majority of companies out there.
So, are we going to see some dramatic accelerations in performance of a lot of the tools that we use? What's the impact? Because I seem to remember the promise of eBPF was that I would run my security or my networking or my observability stack deeper in the kernel and performance would improve. But to your point, a lot of those apps are still up in user space. So, are we going to see something dramatic here?
Yes, that's a little bit what this new report is diving into. So one of the promises of eBPF is that speed. And the reason why kind of that promise is coming to fruition right now is because of the flexibility that eBPF provides. So it allows us to rewrite what's happening in the kernel to do new things. So for instance, in networking, a lot of the times, like what we can do is skip certain parts of the networking stack. So a perfect example of the report is Cloudflare, obviously well known for building a safer, better internet. And one thing that they have to deal with a lot is DDoS attacks. So they help mitigate a 13 terabyte per second DDoS attack with the help of eBPF. And the way that they're able to do that is the performance benefits that they get. And the way that they're doing it with is a subset of eBPF called XDP or Express Data Path. And what that allows them to do is to process the packets before it hits the Linux kernel networking stack. So rather than having to process through the whole thing, they're able to say, right as the packet is coming off the NIC, make the decision, should we pass this further onto the stack or should we drop it? And by dropping it essentially as it's coming off the NIC, you're able to massively reduce the amount of CPU that it takes to, is this packet okay? Should we process it? Where should it go? You're just saying, no, this isn't a good packet. We can just drop it. And so they're able to mitigate that while still being able to serve you basically all the internet traffic too. So that's what kind of eBPF is bringing. We can rewrite parts of the Linux kernel, adding this flexibility that we didn't have in before. And by doing that, we can do smart optimizations. Like in networking, we can process things a lot sooner without going through the networking stack. And the report goes into, well, now that eBPF is available to organizations basically everywhere, what are the actual things that organizations are seeing in production to improve that? And so one example was the Cloudflare example that I gave you of mitigating a huge DDoS attack. And they're able to do that thanks to the flexibility and the performance of eBPF.
Hmm. So, besides Cloudflare, who else is called out in the report? What are some of the highlights?
Yeah, so there's tons of people called out in the report. So for instance, Meta is using eBPF for profiling. By profiling all of their applications, they're able to find a one character change that helped them reduce CPU performance by 20% because that was a really often called function. Another example is Datadog. They're using eBPF for both networking through Cilium and security. So looking at how they're able to reduce cycles and have more fine-grained control about what they're doing it. And I think the use of eBPF really spans across the whole ecosystem. It'd be hard to kind of capture all the different ones in the report because there are so many different examples. The companies that we did highlight, though, were spanning a wide variety of industries. So we dove deep into Meta, into Netflix, into ByteDance, into Cloudflare, and also into Rakuten. So telecommunications, consumer applications, social media, the internet infrastructure. The uses of eBPF are almost like endless across all these industries.
Mhm. Um, we're of course living in the age of AI. Do you think that the rise of AI, whether it's on the server side or I don't know, even maybe these AI agents, Is that going to benefit from eBPF, and how so?
Absolutely. I think if you're looking at AI, it, everybody knows the amount of compute and network throughput that the model requires. I don't think that's right. The all the big stories about AI right now is how many data centers that we're going to have to build. And I think eBPF can play a huge part in that, on the training and the build out side in terms of optimization. I mean, this is actually one of the reasons Meta, one of the original adopters of eBPF, turned towards the technology. One of their first use cases was, well, they're getting a lot of internet traffic from cat videos, from memes, from the messages that we're sending through WhatsApp. We need to be able to process that faster. And they turned to eBPF to do the load balancing into and out of all their data centers. And I don't have the numbers for Meta, but one of the users of Cilium's Layer 4 load balancer was able to reduce CPU consumption by 72x. Right. So if you're thinking about at meta scale, if you can reduce how many load balancers you need, how many CPUs you need by 72x, I mean, you're literally saving data centers right now. So, right, the performance, the efficiency improvements is, I think, going to have a massive impact on the use on the training of AI models. In fact, another example, Brendan Gregg, one of the early adopters of eBPF, doing a lot of performance stuff at Netflix. He actually just moved to OpenAI, to do compute optimization at the largest scale. So I think eBPF is going to have a huge impact on both the performance side, but then also actually like on the inference on the downstream side too. I think everybody's concerned about security, these models, what are they actually doing? And eBPF, because it's running in the kernel, can give you granular insight into everything the application at your model is doing. So I think it's both on like the efficiency side and also the observability security side too. eBPF has a huge role to play in the whole AI ecosystem.
Do you think that as we implement eBPF more broadly, that the manage IT might fundamentally change? Because, well, historically we had all these different apps, whether they were networking, security, observability, or to your point, AI, running in user space and required different people and different tools. But if more things are running at the kernel level, can we converge the management of these things a little bit more?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's one of the exciting things about eBPF. When I was kind of talking at the beginning when we were speaking, right, eBPF was merged in 11 years ago, and at the time you only had 4K instructions. Well, now you can do a million instruction programs, and you can do tail calls. eBPF is now Turing complete, and kind of like what we're seeing is the progression of things from user space into the kernel. I think the parallel that I would give is like people used to write their own user space TCP IP implementations, right? And then eventually we kind of realized, everybody's going to do this. It makes sense to kind of move it into the kernel. And I think that's the exciting thing about eBPF actually, is because the whole Linux kernel needs to stay stable for a long time. If it's there, it's kind of deployed on billions of devices worldwide, from servers to cell phones to satellites. So they take very seriously what they're actually putting into the Linux kernel. Now with eBPF, what we're able to do is to experiment. What are things that we're not sure if they'll work out, if they should be in the mainline kernel? What if I need to add this new functionality? You can start move some of those user space things into the kernel and experiment again. And then if those things make sense, you can actually, merge those into the kernel. And so I think we're going to see definitely a progression of things that used to be running in user space, moving to kernel space, but it really depends on the application where that makes sense. So for us in Cilium, one thing that we're seeing right now is like originally it was just kind of like layer 3, layer 4 networking, but we're actually seeing some of the layer 7 networking, including things like HTTP parsers moving into the kernel. So I think that's kind of cool. Or another really exciting area right now is scheduling. The Linux kerneler has had the same scheduler for a really long time now, and it works really well for a wide variety of workloads. But if you have something like a very IO intensive thing, or you have gaming where you really can compare it about the latency, how do you write a new scheduler? And now you can do that with eBPF. People are seeing huge performance improvements for specific types of workloads because they can write new schedulers tailored to those workloads with eBPF.
Mm-hmm. So where do we go from here? What's next for eBPF? What should people be looking forward to?
Yeah, so the whole ecosystem is progressing all the time. I think the exciting thing for me right now is if you look at this report, a lot of these things, the companies that I listed off are these, internet scale companies that were like the original early adopters of eBPF and seeing the benefits of that. I think we're going to see next is that trickling down to a lot of other projects and products across the whole ecosystem in terms and affecting a lot more companies across a wide variety of industries. I mean, the example that I always give is like if you have an Android phone right now, you're using eBPF, right? So that's already billions of devices. But I think it's trickling down to more of the technologies, right? Anybody using Cilium is benefiting from eBPF. So that's everybody running a cluster with data plane v2 on GKE, every single new cluster on Azure, lots of other managed cloud providers. If you're using Datadog and their security product, you're using eBPF. And so I think what's going to be interesting kind of coming up is a lot of people are going to be, maybe looking under the hood of their technology and suddenly realizing, oh yeah, I'm using eBPF too, and I'm getting these benefits of in terms of increased performance, better profiling, more granular observability, more hardened security systems. And they're not going to realize like the magic behind that is eBPF. It's kind of like this foundational technology. It's kind of coming this strategic platform that a lot of companies are building on. And I think these benefits that were highlighted in the report are going to be coming to a lot more companies, whether or not they realize it's because of eBPF or not, through the projects and the products and the tools and the technologies that are building on top of eBPF.
To your point about that, should I, as an IT organization, be conscious in driving the fact upgrade to the latest versions of Linux that support eBPF, and taking it a step further, should I be asking all my providers of tools about what their roadmap is for this, because it has some material benefits to me?
Yeah, I think that's definitely a key question to ask. It's, like the cost benefit analysis you're always asking. In terms of writing your own eBPF programs, I think it's like the question is, do we already have our own kernel team where we need to fine tune things? And you can answer yes, no on that question. Then that's essentially what you're doing with eBPF is tinkering with the kernel. So are we as a team prepared to doing that? Do and support that. If the answer is yes, then eBPF is a great tool. If it's not, then you're probably looking at your vendors, your service providers to do that for you. And then in terms of like updating to the latest kernel version, obviously there's lots of benefits, but it's what are you actually trying to do? Are you most concerned about networking and want to upgrade for something like Netkit? Are we concerned about security? So we want to have better support for something like BPF tokens to manage the permissions of eBPF. Do we want to upgrade to SCEDX for changing our scheduling? And looking at like what your specific use cases are will inform essentially what kernel version you need to move up to have those things from eBPF. And then on the kind of like tooling and product side, I think like what companies are looking for is like they're not looking for, I wouldn't think of eBPF as a checklist technology. Like check, like yes has eBPF. In the same way you'd be like, yes, check has like WAF functionality. eBPF is a technology. It's not a solution. It's not a business outcome. Companies are looking for solutions and big business outcomes. So I would evaluate solutions based on whether you're achieving the goals that you're actually trying to do. Now, in my belief, and if you look at this report too, like eBPF is going to be underneath those tools, those products, those services that are going to help you achieve the business outcomes that you want to because of the performance and the flexibility benefits that it has. But whether that's actually checklist criteria, I would actually say no. But I think those types of tools and services and products are going to rise to the top because of the benefits that eBPF gives them underneath. It's really becoming kind of the strategic platform. So I think you will see it come out in a lot of projects. But whether it's a checklist item, I would actually say no.
You're a maintainer, so what do you need as a maintainer? Are you getting enough contributions from folks? Do you need, I don't know, maybe just people to work on documentation? But I'm asking this question because in the age of AI, it seems like we're writing more code than ever. So are people contributing more code, or what's going on from your perspective?
Yeah, I think it really depends on what type of project you're looking at, how that's coming to the surface. I think the Linux kernel, as a male Linux-driven and deeply technical project, has their kind of own thing. I would say one actually super interesting use case from the BPF subsystem was actually the first one to implement AI reviewers. So if you submit a patch to the BPF subsystem, it's actually reviewed by AI before it goes to external maintainers. And I think this is actually a really big benefit for open source maintainers, right? It's getting the code that's being contributed, making sure it's in the right format, it's free of bugs or as many bugs as you can think. It's actually following the guidelines. And then when you actually have the human in the loop, that's the really expensive time, the maintainer's time. It's already kind of free of a lot of these bugs and formatting and linting things. So I think that's like a huge boost for like how AI can help the open source ecosystem. And it's cool to see that the eBPF subsystem is like at the forefront of that, because I think it'll help move the technology even faster forward together. But then like what eBPF as technology actually needs, I would say the most important thing for us is like hearing all the different use cases. People contribute patches upstream, but like eBPF is such a powerful and flexible technology that we can't think of all the different ways that people are using it. I listed, networking, profiling, observability, security. Now it's going into scheduling, it's going into devices, into hardware. There's so many different use cases. We need to hear about them so that we can make sure that those cases are supported by BPF.
All right, cool. Well, folks, you heard it here. eBPF, maybe its time has finally come because it's starting to show up in a lot more places. And I think the average IT organization is going to gain a lot more experience with it in the months ahead than they have in the last decade for sure. Bill, thanks for being on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, and back to you guys in the studio.
Enterprise AI applications need a solid data foundation, bringing together disparate data sets in a secure and flexible manner. But despite years of effort, most businesses still have a diverse data environment. Before we will see the value of AI in enterprise applications, we have to solve the challenge of data access. And that's what we're discussing today with Ken Yegan of CData. Welcome to Utilizing AI, the podcast focused on practical applications of artificial intelligence from the Futurum Group. Each episode brings together diverse perspectives to explore news and use cases in the ways in which AI is transforming enterprise IT and the industries it serves. I'm your host, Stephen Foskett, president of the Tech Field Day business unit here at the Futurum Group. Before we dive into the discussion, let's meet who's on the panel today.
Hi, everyone. Brad Shimon. Good to be back with you. I am the VP and practice lead for data intelligence. I'm already thinking about chatting with Ken today of data intelligence, analytics, and infrastructure here at Futurum. And it's my pleasure to join you guys. And we have an exciting guest on. I'm going to introduce him now. His name is Ken Yegan with CData. Hi, Ken.
Hi, Brad, Stephen, thank you very much for having me. I'm the Chief Product Officer at CData, Ken Yegan, and CData is a leader in enterprise data connectivity and integration, and we have one of the first managed AI connectivity platforms on the market. So excited to talk today about AI. As Chief Product Officer at CData, my focus is really on how our customers turn data connectivity into a governed, scalable foundation for enterprise AI.
And that's why we're happy to talk to you about this because, again, this is Utilizing AI. We're all about figuring out practical, useful solutions based on AI. And I learned about CData last year, and boy, it is such a great idea because essentially one of the ways in which AI is going to become useful is when it can ingest and act on the various types of corporate data that enterprises have and really bring that data together and give us, help us to build applications that use it. The problem is that data exists all over the place in all sorts of different formats and so on. And from the initial discussions with CData, it seems like y'all are really focused on solving that problem. So Ken, let's start with just a little bit of an understanding. What's the problem when it comes to data and AI?
Yes, Stephen, the problem around data and AI is really data is an AI problem. The strongest predictor of AI success really is that maturity of your underlying data infrastructure that takes and delivers the enterprise context to these powerful models that companies are investing in. And so the companies have to act on that data. They need to be able to understand it. They need to be able to access it securely and correctly. And then they need to be able to take action on it, which is sometimes requires writing back into those systems as well. That is a data integration problem. And that requires a lot of sophistication and understanding the semantics of the data and how to access those systems. There's some new technologies and protocols and techniques that are greatly unlocking that, but you also need that understanding and governance layer as well. And that's what we try to do at CData.
Yeah, and I would argue that there is no AI without data. I think that they two go hand in hand, peanut butter and jelly, all day long. And like Ken, you said, it is a bit of a challenge for enterprises because they have been working hard for decades now to try to modernize and streamline and democratize access to their data estates. But that is not easy. And it's certainly, if you take 10 enterprises and sit down with them and say, okay, guys, where are you at in terms of, trusting your data, having quality data available to your business users, as well as your agents that you're building right now? And I think most of them would tell you that, it is very much a hit and miss sort of affair right now, that they don't have full trust, they don't have full access. So we ran a survey this summer, actually autumn, asking data professionals, are you investing in AI and are using AI? And as we see everywhere, by and large, over 52% said we are already using it, we are building on it. That is our top priority is AI. And yet, when you ask them, what are your biggest obstacles? Guess what the biggest one is? It's not security, it's not integration, it's not money. It is data quality, trust, and governance.
Agreed. And Brad, it's interesting because we actually ran a very similar survey on our side, the state of AI data connectivity, and we spoke to over 200 leaders in both the enterprise and in software technology companies. And our findings were very, very similar to yours. So we might have been talking to the same people. We found
Probably were.
maybe, yes. 60% of companies had the highest level AI maturity, also had the most mature data infrastructure.
Yeah.
And the inverse of that, 53% of companies that had immature AI also had immature data systems. So there was a strong correlation between the maturity of their data systems and the maturity of their AI initiatives.
Yeah, because the biggest... Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Stephen.
Yeah, let me just jump in there. Okay. Yeah. Hey, here's an edit point. We're demonstrating how to do this. All right. I wonder if that is a cause or an effect or both. If a company has a mature data foundation, if they really understand their data and they've spent the time and energy and effort to bring it together in some way, they may be better prepared to develop AI applications right from the start. But at the same time, as you're pointing out, if they haven't done that, well, then they're just not going to be able to get the benefit of AI applications, even if they do invest in them. What do you think of the chicken and the egg here, Ken? Is this a requirement or is this a symptom?
I understand, and I think I agree with you with some of this, with the dual nature of this. I would say that there is if a company has a culture of stewarding their data, having good data infrastructure, they already have a culture that's going to allow them to move quickly and adopt AI. But on top of which, they're going to have that good infrastructure in which to do it. Those that haven't made that investment, they're trying to play catch up. They're trying to swap the engine in flight by plugging in better data while also trying to plug in AI. There are some ways to accelerate that, but you're going to have to do a little bit of the work required along the way. What we try to do at CDA is we try to help them sort of accelerate that, take advantage of what they have. The good news is, often when you talk about data infrastructure, you think about, let's get everything into a data warehouse or a data lake and let's stage it all there and everything. And that's important, especially when it comes to understanding your business and analytics, and you can apply AI to that. But there's also sort of the need, and we saw this in our survey and our study as well, for real-time data. And
yeah.
real-time data is not data that's staged in a warehouse, but the data that's sitting inside your operational systems, data that you're going to act on directly and orchestrate your workflows and business processes around. And this is where agents in the world of AI are really starting to come into their own and their ability to sort of do that. And again, they require good understanding of that underlying data. What is the semantics of that data being stored in that underlying system? How do you operate on it? What are the correct ways to work with that data? And combining the semantics with that data access is that sort of accelerant that will allow you to take advantage of it and mature your AI projects much more quickly.
Yeah, I agree, Ken. And it's funny because access and understanding, have to go hand in hand. And I feel like right now in the enterprise, we have unprecedented access comparatively to where we were just, even a few months ago, at the hands, for example, of the model context protocol that Anthropic came out with about a year and a half ago, and how, surprisingly, dominant that has become as a means of helping models in particular access data. But understanding what the data means is, I think, a greater challenge, and one that not a lot of companies are really, able to chat about. I mean, I would love to come back and actually talk about, how the easy button of model context protocol and how dangerous that is, because I think you guys are definitely seeing that in your customer base. But before that, can we talk about the semantic layer? Can we talk about, what companies really need to do to build that understanding? Do you feel, Ken, that we're getting to a point now where we have the ability to not go the data warehouse, data mart route, but instead have this open composable data lakehouse, let's say, that, totally separates storage and compute and lets me use whatever query engine I want, depending on who I am and the company, and always have, access to and knowledge of, when I say quarter close for accounting and sales, that it means this and not that.
Yeah. Well, the common phrase is garbage in, garbage out. So you have to make sure that you're putting good data into that data lake, in order to apply that semantic understanding of it. So absolutely, I think we are approaching that, and I think AI is an accelerant of that, and the ability to have deeper understanding of the structure of the data and the meaning of the data, and both of those are important. Let me tell you what I mean by that. So the structure of the data is how's the data stored? Where do you find and how do you connect the different fields of the data together, and then can interpret meaning out of that? And then understanding that data, like, what does it mean? What is this number? Is this a quarterly number? Is it a monthly number? Does it include US or world, or, North America, whatever that might be? Understanding the context, what, accounting principles, if you're talking about financial data, apply to it. So there's a lot of context in order to interpret that data. And AI is really good at sort of stitching that context together. And at CData, we have some understanding of the underlying structure semantics and a bit of the understanding of what the actual data is, and we inject that into the context of the model. And that semantic context is super critical, because without it, I like to say, is you're left with a system that just burns tokens on ambiguity rather than delivering value to your user.
And that's so difficult when you have such a diverse set of data sources. Not every data source is created equal, and not everyone is going to be able to have that kind of context. Talk to us a little bit more about how you deal with diverse data sets.
Sure. Well, enterprises, the typical enterprise uses hundreds of different systems with data stored in all sorts of different locations. It could be internal databases, on-prem software and systems, SaaS-based solutions, partner systems, and so on. So you have to be able to pull all that data together and connect it in the LLM in order for that context to be valuable. And that is what a connectivity platform really helps with. We are actually able to go out and connect across systems and join data across systems, take a bit of the burden off the LLM, so you're not consuming all of your context and all of your tokens by having to bring all the data and do that processing in the LLM. We can push that down into these underlying systems across multiple locations and then expediently bring that back to the LLM so it can do the final sort of reasoning or actions that it needs to perform. So being able to handle diversity is really, really critical, especially in some of these new agent workflows that businesses are building. We as humans, we deal with that sort of diversity day by day. You move in between what you used to call swivel chair integration and moving between system to system, pulling data together, copying and pasting, pulling up analytics reports. We do that as part of our job. We're now asking AI and agents to do this. And so it needs to be able to manage and handle that diversity. So you need to be able to have a system, an underlying infrastructure that supports that diversity as well.
Yeah, at scale, right, Ken? Because as we start to get into these very advanced agentic pieces of software that we're building right now, getting data to the model is half of the challenge, half of that battle, and not just understanding it. And so you see a lot of investment right now in things like memory caching for being able to batch process and be able to not burn tokens, but still get the data to the models. And I think we need to also think about the fact that it's an entirely new constituency, not just for consuming data, but for producing data. Because these agentic processes create a lot of information as they go. And it's data that needs to be managed by the business because I was just actually talking to a number of companies who are building out commerce systems that are agentic, and the biggest challenge they felt they had was being able to take the data that gets generated from each interaction with their customers and to have that available to the agent not just today but tomorrow and the day after tomorrow.
Yeah, and that's where these data management platforms, large data lake solutions can really valuable. You have a place you can go store that at scale, and then go back through agents and access it and bring it into the context of your workflow. Um, I do want to go back to Brad to this point. You've brought it up a couple times in the concept of the explosion of access, and what you were saying just there reminded me of it again. And that is really important to think about because I've been around the data and application integration world for almost 20 years now, and saw the explosion of APIs and SaaS and integration and iPaaS, and now with AI and agents and MCP. And data is getting easier and easier to access, requiring less and less sort of technical work to bring it to the point of use within the business. And access is really critical. Access, both in terms of scale, like you said, you can bring back too much data, burn a lot of tokens, bring back inappropriate data that maybe the user's not, or the agent is not allowed to operate on, or maybe the agent might do something with it that a user would know not to do. So you need to be able to sort of govern that. You need to be able to handle at scale. You mentioned model context protocol. You can have a tool explosion. Model context protocol represents everything as tools, and you can only handle so many tools within the context of an LLM. So you need to be very efficient in the tools that you expose within an agent to the LLM and to how much data you bring back. So leveraging the power of these underlying systems to not overload the LLM with too much data. So there's a lot of things around access that need to be thought of by someone architecting an agentic system. And again, those are areas that I spend a lot of time thinking about. How do you actually scale this and do it effectively and efficiently? And it's something that we see our customers really kind of struggling with when they come to us, but realizing that there are better ways to do this.
There are definitely better ways, and unfortunately, the technology is moving so quickly that it's becoming as you mentioned, too easy to access data and to do so unwittingly, unresponsibly, and also it's performance wise, the tools that we have available to us are allowing us to build systems that we can't support. Our infrastructure just isn't ready for. And I like to think, when I think about C data and vendors that are playing in the space you are, that at the end of the day, it's about helping customers see that they should not go the shadow IT route because that's dangerous. But there are options to accelerate what they have and to meet those evolving capabilities as well as needs that we're seeing start to come into market. I mean, I saw a model come out just this week that has the ability to handle 400 tool calls in a single, long running pass. That's insane.
Wow, that's a lot of processing, a lot of power that you have in that type of model. And that's the thing. We don't know what's going to come out next week. We don't know how these models are going to evolve and what capabilities they have. We know they're going to do more than they do today, and so you have to kind of plan for this unknown future. And so when you're thinking about how you design these systems, you do need to think about scale and governance, and you also need to think about what might be possible 6 months from now. And the other thing is make sure that you're designing to update and refresh this, realizing that your architecture is going to change. There's going to be innovations to take advantage of. So you have to be agile. And so you need to use underlying infrastructure that's also agile and gives you that flexibility. Don't tie you down to one particular model or infrastructure vendor. Allow you to move around, consume new data sources that you didn't necessarily have, that you weren't thinking about before. So that agility is really important in this type of fast moving world of AI.
Well, and that point that you're making about goes to the point of maintainability, and that's been a key problem. Anytime you're building an application that integrates diverse data sets or tools, it is the inherent sort of fragility of those systems because vendors can change the ways that their APIs work. They can change they could abandon one API or another. They could really upset the apple cart. And this is especially true. It gets multiplied when you have more and more and more disparate, components in there. So one of the points that I was going to ask, and I think you've sort of just answered it, is why not just rely on the vendors to make this accessible? Why not just work with, whatever happens to work? And I think that your answer might be because even if it works now, it might not work later. And also maybe, different vendors may have different approaches. They may not want to support this or that model. And you would perhaps allow them to integrate with a broader set of data. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. You might want to switch vendor. You want to switch model vendors next year. Did you tie yourself to the capabilities or the interface of that particular vendor, or do you have the ability to kind of switch that out? This is particularly the case when going with sort of full stack solutions from some of the legacy players. You miss out on some of that innovation that's happening in the market because they're going to be a little bit more. They're going to be a little bit slower to bring that capability to market. And so you want to have that agility. That's exactly right.
Yeah, and I think it's when I look at the marketplace for this year, one of our biggest trends that we see evolving is this acceleration through integration, and that you know last year we probably would have talked about the format wars and is it going to be Apache or is it going to be Delta, and that's done. It is definitely Apache Iceberg all day long, and that separation of storage and compute I mentioned. And what that does is place the burden on the vendors who are building these systems to provide that sort of interoperability. And what I worry about, honestly, is that we sometimes, when we get a shiny new toy, we over rely on that toy to scale with our needs in the marketplace. And I think MCP is one of those that's just been so overused, right now that it's becoming itself a sort of liability in terms of that's like we talked about before, understanding the meaning of the data that it's accessing the right data. How do you secure that access point? Because those standards like A2A, MCP, any other framework you want to throw out there for integration is, an abstraction layer. And those abstraction layers aren't free, right, Ken? They do have a cost you have to pay.
I want to agree and disagree with you on that. So I agree that there's a trade off whenever you have an abstraction layer, because you're always in a trade off, because otherwise you would go to a proprietary approach and you might get something very much more specific for your needs. But abstraction layers help markets sort of stabilize and mature. They allow people to focus on one thing, and that's what MCP has done. It's allowed people to focus on a single way to connect their data, and their tools into the LLM. Now, if you just utilize it in that way, and you don't think about how you deal with authentication, how you deal with governance, how you deal with security, how you scale it, how do you manage it, change management, all of that, then you're going to be in trouble, like you say. Then it's a crutch, and you're not going to be successful at the end of the day. If you just
Agreed.
go grab the latest MCP server in some open source community, it might work for you initially, but you're quickly probably going to find out it's a bit brittle, it's a bit fragile. Even some of the ones from some of the first party providers out there, they're incomplete. And they don't maybe have all the capabilities that you need in order to solve for your problem. So you got to build around that. And that's one of the things at CData, we're looking at that. We've built our own MCP servers for over 300 different critical business systems. And we've built all the governance, we built the security, we built the scalability, and I also added that semantic layer around it to make it much more effective, much more efficient. So that now you do have something that you can rely on, that's stable, and that you can scale your systems on top of.
Well,
Yeah, I
since you've
recall
done,
there being a market. Oh, I'm sorry,
yeah,
Stephen. I
I'm just,
recall there being a market specific to integration. That's all vendors did, and they built connectors.
Yeah.
And we seem to, as a marketplace, have tried to move away from that and say, oh, you can just deal with yourself. But that's really not the best approach when you're trying to have a system that can adapt to that changing data estate that we've been talking about, to be able to say, today I need Salesforce Data Cloud. Tomorrow I need something on, a totally different platform from SAP.
Yeah. And I would say, for very simple things, for very simple APIs, a lot of roll at your own. But as CData, we've lived in that sort of world of connectivity for many, many years. We have 10,000 customers that are licensing and using our connectors, including some of the largest software companies in the world that are embedding it inside their platforms in order to provide connectivity out to other data sources. So
Mm.
connectors are a critical component. MCP, as we're talking about here, Model Context Protocol, puts an abstraction over that concept so that anything that you can connect to, anything that has an API, you now have a way to plug it in to an LLM and make use of the data and make use of the actions that you can perform. And that's important to think about. It's like MCP can be data access, but it can also be operational execution. And there are other concerns when it comes to operational execution. You're changing data, you're triggering workflows, you're triggering actions within your organization, within your enterprise that have implications. And so, again, security, governance, and all around that, scoping the permissions down to the set that are necessary for that agent to perform the types of actions that would be necessary for whatever its goal or objective is, and not allowing it to stray beyond that.
yeah, I think that you all have a lot more experience with MCP than most of the folks listening. I wonder. I appreciate you kind of bringing the thoughts to the fore here about MCP and thinking about governance and security. What else could you tell us if we want to kind of step back here a little bit? What should people know about MCP if they're looking at it, if they're thinking of implementing it? What have you learned in all the years of developing, or the year of developing all these MCP servers? What are the lessons you've learned?
Yeah, I mean, the lessons I learned, first of all, MCP sits on top of the underlying data sources. The APIs or the SDKs are used to access them. There's a lot of complexity. Just because something is REST doesn't mean it operates in a certain way. So there's a lot of complexity underneath it that you need to deal with in order to have a good functioning MCP server. Authentication is still hard. We wish it could be easier. I mean, so back in the day, I actually worked on the SAML committee to develop that as a standard. It took us a long way. We're still, utilizing that inside of OAuth and everything else. So, but there is a lot of complexity when it comes to identity, and also with MCP, you have to think about identity in the context of the user, now in the context of the agent user, and the scoping of that identity. So that's something to deal with. There are their own little sort of enhancements or additions that each client has created. OpenAI, they have their OpenAI, they have their apps. Claude, Anthropic, and Claude, they have skills. They have different things that they're building around MCP that are specific to each of them. And so you need to think about how your MCP server is going to interact with each one of these whether it's a chat LLM type agent or an agent platform. That's something to think about. And then there's governance. There's how do you discover the registry for discovering? I mean, it's okay if you know you've got a handful of MCP servers, but what if you've got thousands of MCP servers? What if everything in your enterprise is suddenly MCP enabled? Now you need to have a concept of a service registry and some sort of governance around it. So we're not getting away. We had that problem with APIs and API management. We had it back in the SOA days with SOA service registries. We had it even back in the Corba days in the 90s. So it's naming and discovery is always going to be an issue. It's gotten a bit easier with LLMs, but with MCP you still have that concern.
Yeah, bring back middleware. I love the SOA era, just because we were trying to build software the right way, and it just turned out that it was a little bit more difficult than we thought. But maybe we have the option now, but I totally agree with what you're saying, Ken, and I feel like when you're talking about MCPs as just another means to get to those sources, you do have to consider the models. And I've felt for a while now that the models themselves, especially the frontier models, are much more than just an endpoint that you're querying. They're actually platforms, and so you need to have standards. You need to have some sort of registry to understand when Google changes the Gemini API subtly, that it's not going to break your application tomorrow. Maybe the model itself changes in its ability to refuse a request or continue the request. And all of that is much harder to deal with when we have these models that are non-deterministic, that we're using as infrastructure.
Exactly. If I can just summarize some of my thoughts on that. So I'm a proponent of MCP. I like that it's being developed in real time and tested in the market and iterated on, as opposed to being developed in sort of an ivory tower and over engineered. We've seen that in the past. So I really like the approach that the vendors have taken to kind of come together on this and try to solve too much and allow other infrastructure and software companies and the LM providers to come in and build around that to kind of sort of polish those rough edges and provide the additional support and capabilities that are needed. I think that one of the key areas that needs a little bit more work and that we're focused on is that semantic context, as we've talked about, and understanding what the capabilities are, the underlying systems. I think that it opens up and allows for real-time data access and action. I think that's very important. And it recognizes that so much of the enterprise data is in this sort of structured format that agents need to be able to access and operate on. And that combination with these types of standards and these types of capabilities will allow us to get to sort of this promise of digital employees, digital agents that are agent to agent working together, swarming together to solve problems and operate businesses more effectively and create more enterprise value for us. So all of that said, I think it's time for companies to be investing in their data connectivity, investing in their infrastructure, and to do this to enable AI to answer and act on their business.
Yeah, thanks for that. And I think that's a good message to leave our audience on here. As Brad said at the top, you can't really build an effective AI application without good data. It's all about the data. And that means that this is an area that companies are going to have to invest in if they're going to have an effective AI application. Thanks for joining us. Before we go, many of our listeners may wonder how they can continue this conversation or where they can connect with you. Brad, let's start with you. What are you researching? What are you working on? And where can people find you?
Yeah, right now I'm actually building out a new comparative report using our Signal agentic report process on data intelligence platforms, and that's going to be all about how you get that semantic layer and put that in action, just like Ken said. So, looking forward to that. And if anyone wants to contact me, I'm on the usual socials, primarily on LinkedIn at Brad Shimon. And you can also find me and my colleagues from Futurum on thefuturumgroup.com.
Excellent. And Ken, how about you?
Great. Thank you, Stephen. Likewise, happy to people to reach out to me, connect to me. LinkedIn's going to be the best way. Ken Yeagan on LinkedIn, on other social, on X and other things as well. I mentioned earlier, but I encourage you to download CData's State of AI Data Connectivity Report from our website. We'll provide the link along with this podcast. And you can also check out our product, our managed MCP offering is called Connect AI, and it's available at cdata.com. And I will be speaking in March at the Gartner Data and AI Summit in Florida. So if you happen to be there, come check out, talk. We're going to be talking about the same topic there.
Excellent. And as for me, I run Tech Field Day. This week is AI Infrastructure Field Day 4. If you're interested in the nuts and bolts of AI, tune in at techfieldday.com and the Tech Field Day socials. And of course, we will be having another AI Field Day in May. So keep an eye on the Tech Field Day socials to learn more about that. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Utilizing AI podcast. If you enjoyed this discussion, please do subscribe on YouTube or your favorite podcast application. Also, drop us a line, give us a rating, give us a review. We'd love to hear from you. This podcast is brought to you by the experts at Futurum Group, where insight meets AI. For show notes and more episodes, head over to Techstrong.ai, the Utilizing AI YouTube channel, or Techstrong's new TV app. Thanks for listening, and we will catch you next week.